Hello and good evening, everyone. Only Positivity here. No coffee today, but I do have a Good and Gather tropical cherry sparkling bitch. Um, Ready to kick off podcast number 59 on this playlist that I'm looking to launch called Elevated Thoughts. Now, before diving into the book and everything like that for today, let's go ahead and level set. So, as I endeavor upon pursuing knowledge and life experience in this next phase of life through cannabis, fitness, photography, traveling, many more things, one habit that I've formed is reading. So, this podcast essentially goes through some of the books I've been reading as of late, taking those lessons learned, applying them to experiences in my life. So, before diving into the book, let's go and start with today's story. So not necessarily a funny story, but as the weather gets nice and people are getting vaccinated and everything like that, I have been kicking off the basketball season, right? So playing ball with my buddies, and then for the entirety of COVID, we really weren't playing with other people, right? We just don't know where they've been, and we don't want to like spread anything. I don't want to catch anything. But since people are vaccinated now, it's worth the ask. Hey, look, if you guys are vaccinated, play a game of 2-on-2, for sure, let's get it. So played my first game of like pickup basketballs 2-on-2 last weekend. Really, really fun. You get some competitiveness in there, and it's nice, friendly competition, right? So me and my buddy, we're playing ball. We're just warming up. We just get to the park, and there's a couple of kids on the other end who right away are like, "Yo, you guys want to play some 2-on-2?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure. Just let us warm up." We just pulled up. I got to put on my shoes and stretch a little bit. So, they're high school kids, right? They're just looking to play. So we end up playing with them. We played like 5 or 6 games, waxed them in every single one of them. Not to go there to my own horn or anything like that, but we had fun. It was fun. Me and my buddy, we like to run, we like to cut and move. Not saying we're good or anything like that, but it's just fun to get that hustle in with some friendly competition. And the part that I was thinking about is that, man, in high school, and all throughout, I played school sports, right? Soccer, basketball, what have you. And it's fun, right? But you don't realize how fun it is until you stop playing the sport, right? Until it's no longer available to you. My voice cracked. So it's interesting because when we got done with these guys, they were like, "Hey, do you guys play here often?" And we were like, "Yeah, man. If we play on Fridays, we generally come after the workday. But if we're on Saturdays, we're kind of here, during the daytime, right?" And they're like, "Dude, you know what, man? Just we're just looking to play, man. School season got canceled. They might kick it off, but we don't know." And that made me really sad, right? I'm really sad for them because that's a really fun, positive activity that high school kids, elementary school kids, middle school kids get into. Keeps them out of trouble, but it teaches them camaraderie, teamwork, and things like that. And I feel bad that they're missing out on these crucial years. But COVID's affected us all, so I wish them the best. But all in all, we got their numbers. We'll hit them up when we go play ball, and hopefully we can get some more 2-on-2 going. Man, it was really fun to get out there, run around, a different type of workout as opposed to doing a workout video at home or using some resistance bands and stuff like that. It's really fun to just get out and run around, and there's really no activity that compares to it, right? So anyway, just some good news there in terms of the world opening back up and just getting back into the gym, man. Like hanging out. You hang out in the gym, man. You go with your friends, you lift some weights, you play some ball, dude. It's a good positive institution for people. And with the weather getting nice, man, we could be outside, we can shoot around, play some 21, 32, play a couple of pickup games too. You know what I mean? So, in any case, that's the story, right? Not too funny, but just a good time. So we'll come back to the book, right? So we're going to go through the second part of Roberto Bolano's 2666. Now, this book is amazing. It's very intense, right? And it's very raw. It's very emotional. It's very descriptive. It can be raunchy at times. It takes you down paths that your standard mainstream books don't go through, right? So I would highly recommend it. It will take you some time. The vocabulary is very very sophisticated, and I often had to spend time like looking up words and then rereading the sentence and see how why that word was used in the sentence, right? And again, Roberto Bolano takes his time with the story. He'll spend pages and pages, maybe chapters, building up a scene just so you can experience it. And it's very euphoric. So in any case, I'll go ahead and dive right in, man. So we went through the first part in a previous podcast. Now, the second part is called part 2, the part about Amalfitano. The part about Amalfitano. Now, that's a character. I'm probably butchering his name, but he's a staple. He's like an enigma in the story. So I'm going to read the quote, right? And then I'm going to break it down a little bit, similar to the way I did it in the last Bolano podcast. So, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. But first, let me go ahead and get a sip of this sparkling bitch. All right. First quote. The poet, meanwhile, blew smoke out of his mouth and nose, making perfect rings, bluish nimbuses, gray cumulonimbuses that dissolved in the park breeze or were carried off toward the edge of the grounds. The poet, meanwhile, blew smoke out of his mouth and nose, making perfect rings, bluish nimbuses, gray cumulonimbuses that dissolved in the park breeze or were carried off toward the edge of the grounds. Now, after reading this little passage, it's really difficult to feel like you're not sitting right next to this guy, right? Like I cannot help but be sitting right next to this dude blowing these smoke rings out of his mouth, right? You feel like you're in a park. You're watching those smoke clouds float away in the wind as they take them away, right? Now, come to myself, right? I consume cannabis, right? And sometimes I smoke it, and my fellow stoners out there, my fellow cannabis consumers out there who smoke weed will understand how engaging and how euphoric and how captivating and vivid it is to watch smoke, right? Whether you're smoking a joint, pulling the bong rip, anything like that, there's something very, very intriguing and captivating about watching a cloud of smoke. Now, that whole idea of sitting on that park bench, right? Maybe this guy's enjoying his cigarette, right? And there's the idea of sitting on that bench and this guy pulling out a cigarette, like hitting the pack, putting it in his mouth, lighting it up, and then blowing the rings, right? Anyone who's seen someone smoke a cigarette can understand that, right? I don't really personally smoke cigarettes, but when you see someone do that, there's something cool about it, right? There's something, there's something chill about it. And I like the process, right? I like the process of it all. Even, for example, rolling your own joint, right? You put together the filter tip, you grind up the bud, you pull out the paper, you put the bud in the paper, you start rolling, you tuck it, you start rolling it up, you lick the crease, and you roll it up. Then you pack it down a little bit, you twist it up, you either step outside, spark it up nicely, and get a nice even smoke, right? So there's something about that vibe that is very interesting for people who understand it. So we'll hop off that quote, go to our next one. Although his eyes didn't light up, part of his bone structure, the jaws, the chin, the hollow cheeks, as if he'd been lost in the Amazon and 3 civilian friars had rescued him. Although his eyes didn't light up, part of his bone structure, the jaws, the chin, the hollow cheeks, as if he'd been lost in the Amazon and 3 civilian friars had rescued him. Now, I'm not really sure what's going on with the full picture that Bolano is trying to paint with this, right? But what I am seeing is a man with a very defined jawline, a skinny guy, kind of like a Tarzan-like guy. So little fat on his face that you can see those dimples that the cheekbones make, right? That a tight face makes. And then think about these 3 friars that had rescued him, right? Imagine being lost in the rainforest. right? You're there for days, maybe weeks, and you're completely remote. You don't know when you're going to be rescued. You started to become accustomed to this lost life in the Amazon, right? And you happen upon these three friars. Now, what are you to think? What are you to think? You might be relieved that someone found you, right? And that means you're going to be rescued. But you might also be a little bit worried about running into three strangers in the middle of the Amazon as well, right? An interesting range of emotions, right? That's why I think he says, his eyes didn't light up, right? Because maybe he was more on alert than excited, right? Than relieved. Maybe he was more fight than the flight reaction, right? So another very interesting quote Bolano puts out there. Let's move on to the next one. Madness is contagious, and friends are a blessing, especially when you're on your own. Madness is contagious, and friends are a blessing, especially when you're on your own. Now, what I'll say is madness is indeed contagious, right? Chaos. There's something about madness and chaos that it evokes an addictive tendency in people, right? Now, these are just my observations. You think about an alcoholic, right? Yes, their body becomes reliant on the alcohol because it, suppresses their emotions and things like that, and they develop a physical tendency to it. But who's been out with friends who love the chaos that a drunk night provides, whether it's silly drunk conversation, kind of problem solving while you're fucked up, and there's something contagious about that, right? You don't like it the next day, but you're definitely down to do it again. Maybe even how about fighting with a significant other, right? Anyone who's in a toxic relationship, right? The initial gut reaction, if you're looking in, is like, hey, why don't you just leave, right? Why don't you just leave that person? It's toxic. Some people are addicted to the fights, addicted to how bad it can get, right? I think we've all seen that. We come back to movie and like TV characters, right? Like Thomas Shelby, Anthony Soprano, Michael Corleone. These men are addicted to madness, right? They don't know how to sit still. They don't know how to stop conquering, stop getting more money. They are constantly ready for that next battle, addicted to the madness. When you say friends are a blessing, especially when you're on your own. Now I'm wondering if Bolano is saying that both madness and friends are a blessing when you're on your own, or just friends, right? So obviously friends are a blessing, but especially when you're alone, right? There's a period of time where I was, I was completely like kind of off the grid. I just kind of had it with being at home. And I just moved out on my own. Really wasn't talking to my parents much, and I was just in a 1-bedroom apartment, and it's all I've ever wanted, right? But the somberness and the loneliness of it is something that you have to get adjusted to, right? No noise, right? When you're in a house with parents and other siblings, there's a lot of noise going on. People are talking all the time. Someone's on the phone, someone's blaring the TV, but then you get used to the silence, and just the tranquility. And then being with your own thoughts is another endeavor, right? And even though I did live alone, true friends are a blessing, because in those moments you're alone, you have time to think about who your real friends are, right? One thing that a lot of people did for me, I feel like at work, just in general, they fed me, right? They would see what I would bring for lunch, and they'd be like, dude, you can't eat that, man. So I would bring like 2 veggie patties and 2 Greek yogurts, and I ate that every single day, pretty much for every single meal for like 2 years straight. And people were like, dude, let me make you some food, man. And those people I still keep in touch with today, because they gave me hot meals when, like, I'm not a cooker, and they made me eat, they invited me to their places, and gave me that nourishment, gave me that home environment, because any dude's apartment who lives alone, for the most part, there's nothing on the wall, maybe just a TV and a futon. I didn't even have a bed frame, I just had my mattress on the ground. So friends are a blessing when you're alone, especially when you're on your own. So we'll hop off that one and come to our next quote. He recognized her at once, as if in his university days he had been in love with her. He recognized her at once, as if in his university days he had been in love with her. Now, I personally think this is a sign of the character that young love takes on, right? When you're young and you're infatuated, like in college, right? You're just it's not purely physical, but it is for men. I think it is, right? We mature later in life, so that infatuation of wanting someone when you're young, and there's the PDA and shit involved, and it's a different type of love than what people might call mature love, right? There's a different level of infatuation you have at that age, when you're in university, when you're in college, and you see someone you really like, and you're nervous, and you need some confidence, you need your boys to back you up and stuff like that, right? So it's really interesting. The way that Bolano mentions that, as if in his university days he had been in love with her, right? So very, very interesting. We'll hop off that one. The black handkerchief of the breeze dried the sweat beating on his forehead. Now, this illustration makes me think of a hot, dry, very warm day in like Nevada, right? I've been to Las Vegas once, and in the summer, and it's so unbearably hot that you can't even be outside for more than a few minutes without like profusely sweating, right? And like let's say you're sweating profusely, right? And when I used to cut the lawn in the summer, I'm drenched, or if I'm playing ball outside, right? And it's just dry heat. And this has happened to me on many occasions. And then all of a sudden, a fleeting breeze comes through, right? And it just, it hits the sweat that's on your back and on your forehead. And because you're sweating, it feels even colder and so refreshing. And when the breeze comes through. And what's interesting is he uses the color black, right? He doesn't say a handkerchief or a white handkerchief. He says the black handkerchief of the breeze. So that brings some kind of darkness to it, right? Obviously some melancholy to it. And I don't know why he personally uses the black handkerchief of the breeze, right? Maybe it sets up for example, let's say he used white, right? Or blue. Maybe that would turn the scene less somber than if he used the word black, right? And he's so intentional that even something like that sets the mood, right? Even the smallest of details sets the mood for you. And I think that's outstanding and shows some real artistry. So we'll jump off that quote, move to our next one. In the expression on Professor Perez's face, he had detected a hint of unease, as if the question concealed some other question, this one highly offensive and wounding. In the expression on Professor Perez's face, he had detected a hint of unease, as if the question concealed some other question, this one highly offensive and wounding. So this situation, I think we've all been in a situation like this, right? Where someone is asking probing questions with a purpose, right? With a maniacal purpose. They're not going to outright say the roots or what they're trying to say. They're going to ask questions and almost make you want to say it, right? In turn, pissing you off. I've been in situations like that. So I'm trying to break one down, right? Like, let's say there's 3 people, right? Two of them know a detail that the third doesn't, right? One of the two wants the other to know and the other doesn't. Maybe a situation where there's a boyfriend and he's with his current girlfriend, and they like run into their ex, right? And maybe the boyfriend left out a detail of the ex's relationship that he hasn't told his current girlfriend, something like that. The ex might begin to catch on to that and ask some questions that the other person thinks, serves as a question with more layers, right? That just because of the history between the two people. Now, that's a really high level example with no specifics on it, but I think you guys kind of get the gist of what I'm saying, right? It's a question that has other questions in it, right? That leads to something a little bit darker. Hop off that quote. We'll go into the next one. The sad American mirror of wealth and poverty and constant useless metamorphosis, the mirror that sails and whose sails are pain. the sad American mirror of wealth and poverty and constant useless metamorphosis, the mirror that sails and whose sails are pain. So metamorphosis is roughly, defined as like transformation from like an immature form to a mature form, right? And I guess this is the illusion of the American dream. And let's break it down. So the sad American mirror of wealth and poverty, a mirror, right? Something that we utilize to reflect our own image. But maybe we are wealthy when we look in the mirror, but we feel as if we're poverty stricken, and we always notice things that we don't have, right? So that mirror of American wealth, we look in the mirror and we say, hey, look, yeah, I got a nice watch, I got nice shoes, I got a nice house, nice car, but that is only short-lived, right? Until you feel like you need a nicer watch, nicer shoes, a nicer car. So it's a mirror that sails and whose sails are pain. So you never end up loving your self-image. Always keeping up with the Joneses, always looking for that next material thing, and that is pain. So we'll hop off that one, jump into our next quote. He was smiling just as he had been the first time they met, a confident, mocking smile, like the smile of a cocksure sniper. He was smiling just as he had been the first time they met, a confident, mocking smile, like the smile of a cocksure sniper. Now, again, Bolano goes so deep into it, he's talking about the specific type of smile, right? He's not just saying he was smiling. So, anyone ever played like Call of Duty or Halo, right? And you're playing with like some fucking scrubs, right? Some people don't know shit about it, right? Or if I'm playing like FIFA, I'm playing with someone who doesn't play FIFA, right? Whenever I play Rocket League, my friends give me this type of smile because I suck at Rocket League, right? So if they score like this nasty goal on me or anything, they just like, get around me real quick. They got this little smile, right? They know it, a little grin, because, and the same for me, right? Like when I play my buddies who don't play FIFA, I'll fuck them up like 7 or 8-0, right? And it's hard not to, right? Like if I'm busting them up and just not like let out a little smirk, because it's like, dude, I'm beating that ass, boy. Like, what's up? But anyway, there's this like air of arrogance and confidence when you know that you're better than someone, or you have them in your sights, and they don't know it, right? Like, for example, sometimes to not demoralize my friends. So my friends aren't soccer fans really, for the most part, minus a few of them. So they never want to play FIFA with me. So when they do play FIFA, sometimes because I've been burnt, right? So one time my buddy was trying to play FIFA with me. He's like, let's play, dude. I got it. Let's play. So I fucked him up like 4-0 in the first like 2 minutes we started playing. He shut the game down. He's like, I'm done. Never playing again. So we haven't played FIFA together since. And I hang out with him like every week. So I hit him too hard. So I learned that, right? So when I play with other people that I haven't played with, or not that I'm really good, right? But people who don't normally play, soccer is one of those things that, it's not a mainstream sport in the United States. So what I try to do now is I let them do their thing. I let them figure out the controls, right? I let them just like fuck around a little bit before I clap on them. But like that's also kind of a slippery slope, because it's like, all right, like I'm letting you win, and boom, right? I got you in my sights, dude. I know what to do. I know any second I'm gonna come get you. But anyway, in the quote, Bolano is using, right, a sniper, right? So there's that element of death that he adds, right? Snipers kill. He could have chosen any other metaphor, right? But he chose this one. So a cocksure sniper, right? Someone who is smiling about killing someone, right? Think about that person. I'm not saying they're a terrible person, but think about someone who takes the enjoyment, the time to smile, because they're so sure, even when they're about to kill someone. It's a different type of smile, right? It's different than a really, really a mocking smile, or a playful smile, right? So he establishes a difference even between the most minute of actions. So we'll hop off that quote and we'll come down to our next. Only 3 left. So People see what they want to see, and what people want to see never has anything to do with the truth. People see what they want to see, and what people want to see never has anything to do with the truth. Now, I think this quote is extremely accurate, right? So let me try to use an example, right? You ever try to assist someone who is having an issue with someone at work, or maybe in their relationship, or maybe having struggles like making gains working out or something like that, right? So now, like, I'm not a guru at working out or relationships or anything like that, but I do feel as if, in general, people want to throw their problems and a lack of progress onto something out of their control, right? Because it's way easier for them to give up or attribute the issue to something out of their control, right? Like, does the person really need help? Or are they just not wanting to move forward? Do you know what I mean? So people will find enough excuses to not do things, right? There's a quote that's like, there's no lack of oppressors amongst the downtrodden, right? So people will always find a reason. But the truth is, just do better, right? And I'm not saying that's not a one size fits all, right? But again, a lot of times people have issues, right? I've met a lot of people who've had issues and maybe come to me for help. And once I try to develop an action plan with them and, things like that, you realize that, they don't really want to be helped. They just kind of want someone to sympathize with them. And that's fine too. I'm there for that too, for my friends. Going back to like some of the books we've gone through, right? People love to bask in their misery, right? Misery loves company, and discuss how hard their life is, right? Without offering any solution. So you offer a solution, they'll say, okay, but this, okay, but this. And I'm not saying I'm like some holier than thou guy. But it's tough to stay on positive wavelengths because it's an active effort, right? You have to actively try to be positive. It just doesn't happen naturally, without enough practice. You have to be in the now, right? Talking about some Viktor Frankl shit. You got to take stimuli that comes at you. You got to triage them in a manner that is mature and appropriate, and make things positive. And that keeps you in a good headspace. So kind of diverting here, but yeah, I'll hop off that quote, move on to the next. You let off steam your own way. I beat the shit out of people, but the fights I get into aren't just any fights. They're fucking apocalyptic mayhem. You let off steam your own way. I beat the shit out of people, but the fights I get into aren't just any fights. They're fucking apocalyptic mayhem. So now, going into the next steps of this quote, right? The guy proceeds to talk about how he goes out to dangerous bars at night, pretending to be gay, so that people will get into quarrels with him because they're in a part of Mexico where this doesn't really like jive, right? Being homosexual doesn't really jive. So he says he needs the release. Now, what I'm thinking is, this is sadistic, this is grotesque, but who am I to say what's right and wrong, right? I think that hurting other people is morally upsetting and incorrect, but that's just me, right? But let's talk about the words here, right? I beat the shit out of people. Apocalyptic mayhem. That's some Mad Max shit right there, right? When you see these words being brought in, there's something archaic, something animalistic, like Mayan, Aztec, flair to it, right? Maybe that's just apocalypto coming out. But it has that very, very gory vibe to it. Raunchy, bloody, things of that sort. And think about it, right? This guy is going out seeking that, right? Like in the book, he says, sometimes I win these fights, sometimes I lose, but I love it. I need the release. And I think maybe, I'm not sure exactly, the reasoning behind it. Like, I personally don't want to get beat up. I don't want to fight, but some people love it. Some people love the rush. It's something very, euphoric to them. It's a release to them, endorphins, all those things. So a very, very interesting quote. And in this quote, you can see how the book also gets a little raunchy every now and then, right? There's a lot of sex in the book. There's a lot of violence in the book too. And it's really crazy. Encourage anyone to read it. Hop off that, jumping into our final quote. They are afraid to take on the great, imperfect, torrential works, books that blaze paths into the unknown. They choose the perfect exercises of the great masters. They want to watch the great masters spar, but they have no interest in real combat. They are afraid to take on the great, imperfect, torrential works, books that blaze paths into the unknown. They choose the perfect exercises of the great masters. They want to watch the great masters spar, but they have no interest in real combat. Now, for example, this book 2666 is one of those books, right? It doesn't have a distinct beginning, middle, and end, right? And that's what your mind wants. It wants a introduction, thesis statement, the body paragraphs of the book, and a conclusion to tie it up at the end, right? Same thing with movies. We seem to want that, right? We want it to tie up somehow. But maybe that's not what it's all about, right? I recently watched Reservoir Dogs again with my fiance, and that's one of those torrential works, right? That it doesn't have a clear beginning, middle, and end, right? You kind of know what happens. There's some really good dialogue in it, but you never see the actual robbery take place and what went wrong. But they don't tie it up for you either. You just have to kind of let your mind take in what is, right? I also just bought this book called House of Leaves, and it's a very interesting book. When you scroll through it, there's some pages that have illustrations on them only. There's some pages that have so many small words on them. It's almost daunting to even start it. There's some pages that have one word on it. I haven't even got into it yet, but it looks so unorganized, right? And my mind wants it to be organized, but why am I doing that, right? Why do I want it to be organized? Again, they want to watch the great masters spar, but they have no interest in real combat, right? We need some raw information. We don't need the mainstream all the time. Not mainstream is mainstream for a reason, but sometimes we need something a little bit more off color, a little bit more deeper in the artistic flair. Get into someone's mind and understand and try to understand what's in there. You might never understand it, but you try, right? So, this book 2666, it's one of those books, right? Like I said, it doesn't have the exact structure. These types of, activities that Bolano is explaining this quote, they're exercises that scare people, right? They dive into parts of their minds and thought processes that are not normally discussed. Even in Peaky Blinders, right? In season 4, when there's like a boxing match, Tommy Shelby doesn't watch, right? And Alfie goes, right? You can't stand a fight that has rules, right? Because they were all in World War I, where there was no rules. They were in the mud. They were fighting. They probably ran out of bullets and had to kill people with like rocks and bayonets and things like that. And that's a different type of chaos, right? We talk about social media these days, right? A lot of people follow a similar trajectory to becoming an influencer these days, right? As I try to like increase my social media presence and things like that, you realize a lot of people don't say certain things because it'll affect like an audience, right? And things like that. A lot of people thirst trap, right? Things like that. Everyone knows what thirst trap is, right? Some people utilize ads and try to get sponsorships and things like that. And none of this is wrong, right? None of it is wrong. Everyone has their own path to happiness and to their goals, right? So I'm not saying anything is wrong. But sometimes, right, when you gain those audiences, right, you change a little bit. And sometimes even like personally, sometimes when even Joe Rogan has changed a little bit since he got really famous, right? I'm tuned into his podcast more now than I ever was, though, right? So nothing wrong there. But people change because, right, relying on sponsorships and income and things of that sort. So you have to do certain things to keep those, right? But what about real thoughts? What about real ideas? What about things other than clout, right? But what do I know, right? I'm just kind of talking out of my ass, I'm just like talking about observations and things like that I'm seeing, not knocking anybody. we talk about combat again, right? Even UFC is not real fighting. There's rules, right? You can't like hit people when they're down or something like that. Eye gouging, all that's off limits, right? That's structured fighting. And then even with conversation, right? You ever go to a party, and people, you do a lot of surface level conversation, right? And that's fine. I like catching up with people that way. What are you watching? What do you what's your workout looking like, right? But you often find that people don't want to really dive into things, right? They want to talk about the most recent the most recent event that happened like on TMZ or something like that. I just want to have like a surface level conversation with you. And that's fine, right? Because we're not always trying to dive into deep things. We're not always trying to go like fully woke on motherfuckers out there, right? So, yeah, I'm rambling, but real combat is different. Real conversation, real thoughts are different than like what the crowd will like sometimes, right? Sometimes they align, sometimes they don't, but I feel like a majority of the time they don't. Real conversation is enriching, and it takes guts, right? It takes confidence, it takes grit to really dive into your mind and articulate some of those thoughts that you might not want to share, right? So that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you guys are enjoying these podcasts. Feel free to leave me any feedback. I've been enjoying meeting with a lot of people recently. People have been reaching out to me on Instagram. I've been reaching out to people. Got a lot of cool guests lined up. So I hope you guys are enjoying. Feel free to leave me any feedback. And remember, only positivity. Thanks, guys.